Mass murders have become all too common here in America. And while each incident has its own unique characteristics, one thing is impossible to ignore. The vast majority of the killers are white males. Joining us is Angie Chuang, a professor at American University who specializes in race and identity issues in the news media. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thanks so much for having me on.
I've been wanting to have this conversation for quite some time, but I guess I've been waiting to stumble upon you to have it with the right person. I just took a look at 2012 and the number of mass killings in 2012. There were 8. 7 of those killings were committed by white males. And I think what has just really annoyed the heck out of me is that has never gotten any traction in the media, that there seems to be a crisis in the white community with respect to young white males and mass killings. If this were any other community, there would be all kinds of activity
Yes.
to make sure that, minorities were no longer able to commit these sorts of offenses.
And there have been in the isolated cases where minorities or Muslim Americans were the perpetrators, and suddenly all the attention is on the fact that the Virginia Tech shooter was a Korean American who was often represented as a foreign Korean, even though he had lived in Alexandria, Virginia since the age of 8.
So that's the media getting it wrong. That's the media feeding the public incorrect information or honing in on, his ethnicity, his
Yes.
race.
And although my research focuses on the media and how they represent these perpetrators or people in the news in general in terms of their race and American identity or lack thereof as perceived, the truth is that media is a product of culture, and that what we saw with, for example, the Virginia Tech case was that all the classmates they interviewed would say things like, oh, he didn't speak English, he was foreign, he was an international student. And so in a way, it's not to take blame off the media, but media is a product of society. They're not isolated from each other, and they
Because to
feed
me
each
it reeks
other.
of, he's not really American like us. He
Yes.
was foreign, so that's why. No. We don't seem to, when there is what I consider to be domestic terrorism, we don't seem to push the issue of, a lot of this is, the majority of this is happening by white males at the hand of white, who, by the way, are highly armed. They are armed to the teeth.
We saw this with Oklahoma City as early as that
Absolutely.
in the mid-90s, where the first Associated Press report said that they were committed by Arab males. And it turned out that it was white separatist radicals, which very often, I call it the privilege of getting to have a reason. They're angry at the government. They're
Right.
you know,
Cliven Bundy, for example.
Or Ted Kaczynski was
Right.
hated technology
Right.
and was in the cabin in the woods. But if you're Muslim, if you're black, if you're Asian, that's the reason.
That's the reason. That's
Yes.
exactly right. That is the reason. And it's never, it's so-and-so and so-and-so, Korean American or black American.
Yes.
It's not so-and-so and so, a white American. They never, that moniker is never
Absolutely.
ascribed to a description when it comes to, he was tall, had blonde hair and blue, well, then he must be white. But there's a crisis in the white community. There is a discussion that needs to be had that is not being had, and the media is not helping. The media normally should be bringing out this issue so that we can have a discussion about it and hopefully come up with a solution. But sometimes the problems aren't in the black community or the Hispanic community or the Asian community. Sometimes the problem's in the white community.
And I think we don't even perceive that there's a white community. The white community is the American community.
That's right.
And
That's
there's
right.
sort of a default to white. If we don't name a specific race or religious identity or some kind of minority identity, then it's a default whiteness.
That's right.
And that's normal. And so then it must be something else. It must be that they were isolated at school.
Come on with the excuses now. Yeah.
They had autism. They were, maybe they even get to be mentally ill. And
Right.
really, if you look at the contrast between somebody like Adam Lanza or the the Aurora, Colorado shooter versus somebody like Nidal Hassan, the Fort Hood shooter.
That's right.
Nidal Hassan clearly had psychiatric issues.
Right.
But everybody focused on the fact that he yelled out the name of God in
Right.
Arabic.
That's right. Allah.
Yeah, and so therefore he's a jihadist. He's
Right.
Muslim. That's the
Right.
reason. Like, let's overlook the fact that he had a long record of psychiatric problems. which-
Because so only white people can have psychiatric problems. Trust me, that's not the case.
And really it's really a disservice, because then we take the focus off these very serious mental health issues. We take the focus off our society's responsibility for some of these shootings or a culture of violence, and we push it onto what I call, in my research, American otherness. That we dissociate them from Americanness so as not to take responsibility for them. And absolutely the media is perpetuating this. Society helps media. Media reinforces what society wants to hear. That's how you sell newspapers.
That's
you
right.
get clicks, you get people to tune into your channel. People don't like being told things that go against what they already believe. And so this is the self-perpetuating cycle.
But it's unfortunate that we're not doing a great service, I think, to a community that, to me, is in crisis and needs help, and that is the white community, and whatever is going on with these white males. But there is something going on, and I don't know what it is, and I feel like we'll never get to the bottom of it, to the crux of it, because we're so busy living in a world where the majority is the American community, and the rest of us are interlopers or carpetbaggers, as the case might be.
Yeah, I found it really interesting in the recent Santa Barbara case with the young man whose name I can't recall right now, but he was posting those YouTube videos that were very misogynist, and the focus really, and not that this wasn't an important focus, but the focus became on gender, and it became on, because again, he's race neutral. He's a white young man, and so therefore, let's focus on his attitudes about gender.
Right.
And again, I feel like so many of these things, like what people put out there when they commit these crimes, are really just symptoms of a much deeper issue. Like, clearly he had issues with women.
That's right.
Many young men in college, sadly, have some terrible issues with women and say awful things, but it doesn't go to that level of committing violence and shooting random people down. So I think, again, what was the psychology there? What was the mental health issue? We were sidetracked because everybody was sort of paying attention to the YouTube videos and the misogyny kind of narrative.
Exactly. What do we in the media need to do to alter this narrative, to really tell the correct narrative, and to look at things with our eyes wide open so that we can help the white community with whatever is going on with white males?
I mean, to be honest, this is the most difficult solution, but media have traditionally not represented the diversity of the United States. As the news industry has shrunk, a disproportionate number of minorities have left the profession. So now we're even less representative. And it may sound, people often wonder, why would that make a difference? Aren't all journalists trained to be educated about these issues? Aren't all journalists trained to be fair?
No.
And the truth is, it's really the informal conversations that happen in the newsroom. On the day of the Virginia Tech shooting, I was sitting in a cubicle pod with 3 coworkers. This was at the Oregonian in Portland, Oregon. We're watching live TV. There's a Pakistani Muslim American, an African American, me, another Asian American, and a white guy. And we're just hanging out watching the TV, sort of horrified by what we're seeing. The African American says, "Oh God, I hope this guy isn't black. This will be really bad if he's black." The Muslim American says, "No, it's gonna be worse if he's Muslim. Like, think about what's been happening since 9/11, and we can't afford to have this." And then at that moment we hear, somebody says, "I think he's Asian American," and then the Korean American woman and I look at each other. I'm Chinese American. We say, "Uh-oh, I hope he's not my ethnicity." And then after this whole conversation, the Caucasian photographer who was sitting with us, he says, "I never once worried that he might be white.
Well,
it never crossed my mind."
See?
And I think that's just so
that's our problem.
indicative.
That's our problem.
But that we could have that conversation.
Yeah,
That was a
exactly.
moment of awareness.
No, that was
for all of
good.
us.
That was really good.
Yeah.
And by the way, none of these people have been female. Angie Chuang, professor at American University, thank you so much for
Thank you for having me on.
allowing me to have this discourse finally. The Feminist Majority Foundation fighting for the rights of women and girls for almost 30 years. That's next on DC Breakdown.